Welcome to America Celebration 250, a celebration of 250 years of proud Jews in America. We are starting off with Russell Mark Wiener, who's going to lead us in some American classics.
That's right. All right, so we'll start off with let's jump into America the Beautiful. It's on your sheets, and I know there's a lot of verses in some of these songs that we usually only sing just one verse, or most people just know one verse, myself included. So I figured let's bust out some of the other verses because someone took the time to write it. We should take the time to sing it. So, nice and loud, along with me. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of rain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. For heroes prove, oh, beautiful for heroes prove, in liberating strife, who more than self their country love, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, still all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. Oh, beautiful for patriot dreams that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities lean, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. And the last verse. Oh, beautiful for halcyon skies, for amber waves of rain, for purple mountains, majesties above the enameled plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, till souls wax fair as earth and air, and music parted sea. No, I think I at least heard those other verses before, but the next one, My Country 'Tis of Thee, I don't think I've ever heard verses 3 and 4 before. So let's try it together. 2, 3. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the Pilgrims' pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. That's the original lyric.
Somebody messed him up along the way. I'm not sure who it was. The original said Hashem.
Okay, so here's an all-time classic. Well, we can just sing the usual first two verses, but I wanted to at least include the other ones in the lyrics because, you know, if you don't question, you know, our nation and our laws and the way things are, then nothing ever changes. So it's important to remember that, you know, we can always do better, but let's just hit the popular verses on this one. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. I run and ramble, and I follow my footsteps to the sparkling sands of the diamond deserts, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Very nice. Well, I know it's not New Year's, but we are coming up on 250 years of America, and so Bashana Haba'a can mean, you know, the 251st year. And let's hope for a good 251st year. Bashana Haba'a Nesheva HaMirpeset Benizvor Zivorim Nodedo ילדים בחופשה, ישחקו תופסת בין הבית ובין השדות. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הנביאים אדומים יבשילו עד הערב והגישו צוננים לשולחן, ורוחות רדומים ייסעו אל הדרך עיתונים ישנים בענן. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. בשנה talking on the phone, Rabbi Rifkin said, well, we'll do a lot of American stuff, but it doesn't have to all be that. You could do Oseh Shalom, for example, or whatever. But see, I have a summer camp brain, and so I'm used to trying to fit Adon Olam to different tunes and so forth. So I thought, surely there's no way the Star Spangled Banner would go to the tune of Oseh Shalom. But I was wrong. It does. So this is a challenge. You're going to have to, y'all are going to be doing this for the first time. I'll be doing it for the second time. There's a word or two here and there that have to go away, but just don't worry about it. Just sing it as loud as you can with me. Okay. Let's see. I gotta get it in my head. Yeah, that's right. I had it. I really did. Okay, I got it. Here we go. And they both start with Oseh, so it was meant to be. 1, 2, 3. Oseh, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, who brought stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. All the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' glare, bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there again. And the rockets' glare, bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Oh, say does that star-spangled banner wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? And that's not a tune that originally the melody we sing of Star Spangled Banner is not the original melody anyway. They married it up with a different piece of music, and of course Nurit Hirsch, I don't believe, wrote the words Oseh Shalom B'Romah. Those are probably older than her, so it's fine. Now, what are we doing?
Now we're doing God Bless America.
Okay.
But we're doing a little spin
We're gonna start it.
in Yiddish.
All right.
So, any Yiddish speakers in the crowd? Anybody? Come on, there's got to be somebody. All right. Where's Marcia? She speaks Yiddish fluently. Fluent Yiddish. Come on. I'm going to need some of you to help me out at Ben Sion. Can you help me with the Yiddish? He just washed. Let him have a little hamotzi. And then grab a song sheet. If you don't have one, there's some up here. All right, we're going to need everybody's help for this. We're doing song number 6, which is God Bless America. Okay? But this one is going to be God Bless America in Yiddish. All right? Ben Sion, you have a seat? Okay, there we go. There's a seat right there. And Kalman and Akin. Okay, all right. So, if you know the lyrics in Yiddish, please join along. Lyle, why don't you sit right next to Joyce? Can Louise scooch over a little bit and put a third seat in right there? There we go. Okay, sorry. It's getting fuller and fuller, the crowd, which is a good thing, because for the Yiddish God Bless America, I'm going to need your help. All right, you give me the backup?
Well, okay, all right, yeah, so could you hand me a thing? I didn't get myself. I was really just planning on just sitting back and enjoying.
Enjoying me? Okay.
Wait, I'm in.
Okay, it's in English phonetics, so please join in with me, shall we? It does not have the prelude. We'll do that for the second one. Okay, here it goes. God bench America, land was ich lieb, steh ich bei in meine Seite, mit der Strahl liberal lieb, von die Berge bis die Tore, bis die Arme weiß mit Scheu Gott, Mensch, Amerika, mein süßer Heim. Gott, Mensch, Amerika, mein süßer Heim. There we go. I will have you know, by the way. So the words, does anybody know who wrote God Bless America? A nice Yiddish speaker, Irving Berlin. And actually, I think he wrote it and then didn't release it. Like he felt for some reason it wasn't ready to be released. And years later, maybe by World War II,
Yeah, he wrote it in World War I and released it in World
something
War
like that. Yeah, like he wrote it like while he was serving World War I and during World War II, he had this feeling again. In any event, it's a beautiful song, and to me, the fact that it's in Yiddish also highlights the fact that there was a lot of Jewish contribution to the good old US of A, including Irving Berlin. Many of his songs, which we sing in December.
That's right. That's right.
That's always a fun fact.
Yeah.
And now we'll do God Bless America in the English, shall we? All right.
And I actually don't know the prelude.
I could do it.
I was intending on learning it today.
Okay, sounds good. So, if you know it, sing along. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful that we're far from there as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Nicely done, everybody. Thank All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Russell. Russell, who, by the way, as you can see, has a little bit of a harder time getting around these days, but made it out here. We're very glad that he did. Thank you for bringing all that spirit.
And I appreciate you giving me a hand. I could really use a foot.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sinai Civics, our 4-week journey exploring the Jewish ethics that shaped America's founding. Over the course of the next 4 weeks, we are going to be exploring some of the Torah ideas that made their way into the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, even into some of the ideas that the Pilgrims came here with, etc. And we're going to talk about some of the history of America and the Jewish people and how we play such a huge role. I want to open by saying that to some of you it might be strange. We just spent the past 30 minutes in a Chabad center, which is all about Judaism, and it's all about Jewish values, and while the lecture is going to be about that, the songs are just songs about America. Why are we here celebrating America? Like, why is that a Jewish thing? And the answer to that, I think, goes back to understanding that America is a very, very unique place in the history of the world, particularly for the Jewish people. There's a reason why, and we'll do some exercises soon to talk about that, there's a reason why America is the only place that has attracted so many Jews for so long. That's not just because, oh, it's another country, we'll go there, etc. The Rebbe would often refer to the United States of America as Malchus or Medina Shel Chesed, a land or a government of kindness. It's not just that in the United States Jews are tolerated, it's that for possibly the first time ever in a foreign nation, Jews were actually accepted. And we're going to talk a lot more about that. We're going to start off. So as we mentioned, this is lesson 1, the foundations of the covenant. So welcome to lesson 1, which is titled the foundations of the covenant. And I'd like to take a moment to thank 2 of our sponsors who helped make this evening possible. Eli Sizer and Esther Necha-Miller. Thank you so much. I had a vision that I wanted the first lesson to be a whole event, to be a sing-along, to have good American food. I didn't quite envision the hot dog inflatable balloons, but that was a nice addition. And thank you to them for helping me make that a reality. So, lesson 1. All right. It is the year 1654, and a rickety ship, battered by storms and heavy with the weight of hardship and fare, sails into the bustling harbor of New Amsterdam, which would later become New York. It is September of 1654, and on board this rickety ship are 23 souls. These souls are not explorers seeking gold or fame or new land or power or grandeur. They are not merchants laden with goods trying to trade with the new colonies. They are refugees with nothing but the shirts on their backs and a story of survival. These are the first Jews to set foot in what we today call the New World, at least the first Jews that are documented. I know there's all sorts of hearsay about perhaps Christopher Columbus or some of the people on the Santa Maria. We have no clear evidence of this, but these are the first Jews that are documented to have arrived in the US. Who were these people? They were families, men, women, and children. They were carrying a long history of suffering and exile. Their ancestors had been forced to flee. Let me go through the map with you. Had been forced to flee, where? Well, wait. Their ancestors had been forced to flee Spain after the expulsion of the Jews by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. And from Spain they went to Portugal, right? Now, in Portugal, of course, the Spanish Inquisition followed them shortly thereafter, and so they were expelled from there. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think the years were 1492 and 1497. Yes. Is that correct? Okay, thank you, Benzion. Tenaciously holding on to their Jewish tradition, they fled and they landed. They took off. They not took off. What's the word? They sailed from the Iberian Peninsula around a century later and settled in Amsterdam. Right? They settled in Amsterdam where they're granted the freedom to return to their Judaism openly. Some of you may be familiar with this. There are many Jews who ended up in Amsterdam that were fleeing Spain and Portugal. The Jews of Amsterdam flourished, and many of them became deeply involved in the international trade. When the Dutch conquered Brazil, this is in the 1630s, a few hundred Jews moved there, establishing a community in Recife, Brazil. I tried to call my brother-in-law, my nephew-in-law, in other words, my niece's husband, who's from Brazil, and his job as a Chabad rabbi is that he visits all of the remote corners of Brazil. I believe that he once gave me the whole history of the Jews from Brazil, all about these people. Anyways, I couldn't get a hold of him earlier today. He was busy running a summer camp, but I'll try to get that full story and get it to you next week. So a few hundred Jews moved to Recife, Brazil, to the Dutch colony, and they established a community there. The problem was, shortly afterwards, in 1654, who should conquer Brazil? If not for the Portuguese, right? Hence that in Brazil today, they don't speak Brazilianese. They speak, what was that?
Same thing happened in Mexico.
Same thing happened in Mexico? I didn't know that.
Yes.
And what did the Portuguese bring with them? Well, I imagine in Mexico it was the Spanish, but in Brazil, the Portuguese brought with them the dreaded Inquisition. So these Jews are forced to flee once again, the same persecution that they had fled just decades earlier, they're now fleeing again. This is this small group of 23 Jews who was among the last to escape. Their ship was blown off course, and their voyage turned into a nightmare. They were robbed by pirates, they stripped them of all of their belongings, their ship was battered by storms. Finally, they reached the harbor of New Amsterdam. New Amsterdam is a Dutch trading post. Sorry, I'm trying to get the slides to go with me, but thank you for your patience.
Rabbi, we're used to your technique.
So they go from Portugal to Amsterdam, from Amsterdam to Brazil, and from Brazil to New Amsterdam, right? Or as I like to call it, New York. Okay. All right. The problem is, as they arrive in New Amsterdam, they have a very, very rocky beginning. Why is that? Remember, they've arrived with nothing. They had no money left to pay their ship's captain, right? That's the way it worked in those days. You promised him that when you got there, you were going to pay him. He hadn't been paid. So the director general, who was a lovely man by the name of Peter Stuyvesant, threw them into jail, sold off their meager possessions, and then wrote to his bosses at the Dutch West India Company saying, we need permission to expel, in his words, this deceitful race from the colony for good. Thank goodness, in Amsterdam, this is already quite a few hundred years, 150 years after the expulsion from Spain, and many Jews have already flourished in Amsterdam, there are actually quite a few Jewish investors in the Dutch West India Company. And so as a result, the Jews in Amsterdam actually have the back of Amsterdam, we mean Old Amsterdam, right? They have the back of the Jews that have just arrived in New Amsterdam. By the way, for me, this is such a fascinating part of the story. It's like an emotional part of the story because there is no doubt that they haven't met each other. Remember, they had left Amsterdam decades earlier. Even if they knew about them, that was it, they knew. Forget the fact that this is before Twitter and everything else, right? Besides for that, there was decades in between. Even if there was Twitter, what's the chances anybody even remember that there was a group of Jews who went to Brazil and that they got word that from Brazil they were expelled to there's no way they knew. But Jews knew that there was a message that came about Jews, and they stepped in. They stepped in, and they petitioned the government in Amsterdam, saying, hold on a second. If Jews are allowed to live and trade in Holland, then shouldn't they have the same rights in its colonies? And sure enough, in April of 1655, the company relented and granted the poor refugee Jews, these 23 Jews, permission to reside in New Amsterdam. The fact that some of these Amsterdam Jews were very wealthy and well-to-do in Amsterdam obviously was a help, and that was the end of that story. They weren't immediately granted equal rights, obviously. At first, they weren't allowed to operate a public synagogue, so they started a synagogue inside a private home. Very much Chabad style, move down, buy a house, start services in your house, eventually you'll get to a shul. And that is indeed what happens. That shul is known as, anybody? She'erit Yisrael. To date, it is the oldest shul in the United States. The only reason you may not have heard of it, and you might have heard of the shul in Long Island, which we're getting to, in Rhode Island, which we're getting to, is because this shul no longer exists in the same physical location, but that community has continued uninterrupted since the mid-1600s, which I think is wild, absolutely wild. It still exists today in Manhattan. Obviously, it's moved from the home to a building, from the building to a building, etc. There was another big moment. Where was it? I had read about it somewhere. I don't remember exactly where it was. In 1655. So we were just in April 1655, and this is late 1655. So figure November, December of 1655. A second group of Jews arrives in New Amsterdam, and they have with them a Torah, a Sefer Torah, an actual Torah scroll. We have a description of it in someone's diary about how the Torah scroll comes off the ship and the joyous celebration that there was, and how they welcomed that Torah scroll into the shul in She'erit Yisrael. After the War for America's independence, this, meaning obviously there's Jews there throughout, and as Jews do, more Jews arrive, they join the community grows, people having children, etc., over the many years from the mid-1600s until the War of Independence. And during that period, what happens is the tolerance slowly grows into something called acceptance. And this is very, very crucial, and it's something that I want to take a moment to pause and to talk about. Because over that period, this idea that Jews are not only tolerated, but actually accepted, becomes a fundamental pillar of the United States. In fact, for those that are the legal minds in the crowd, you'll recognize this line, which we're about to read in text 1, not only as the precedent, for example, for Jewish religious rights, but for other religious rights. And the reason for that is because as the founding fathers put together all the documents that form our country, one of the things that gets baked into it is this idea that religions are not only tolerated, even though I know till today I can't stand that term, religious tolerance, but the truth is that in the United States, religion is not only tolerated, Judaism is not only tolerated, but it's actually accepted. And there is no better text for us to read than text 1, which is a letter from George Washington. So for those of you, yes. Does anybody have an extra book or copy? Is there an extra one on anybody's table? There you go, Menachem right there, perfect. Okay. So after the War for America's independence and the ratification of its Constitution, George Washington is working to promote this new Constitution and Bill of Rights. So this is 1790, and he writes a letter to the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island, laying out America's policy towards Jews and religious freedom in general. Vicki Greenberg, if you can read for us, please. If you'd like to follow along with us, we're on page 3 in your textbook. Text 1, to bigotry, no sanction.
To bigotry, no sanction. Letter from George Washington to the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island, August 18, 1790. The citizens of the United States of America have a right to applaud themselves for having given to mankind examples of an enlarged and liberal policy, a policy worthy of imitation. All possess alike liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. It is now no more than toleration is spoken of, as if it was by the indulgence of one class of people, that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to bear and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while every one shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid.
Which is literally invoking a verse from Micha. Come again? Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
Which is literally invoking a verse from Tanakh to make the Jews feel welcome. If you'd like to see a little bit more on the uniqueness of the America's promise to the Jews of religious freedom, you can see Appendix A a little bit more about that. But to me, what I find most insightful about this quote from George Washington, and by the way, his vision, his prophecy, that others should also follow, actually comes true. There are other countries that have since initiated the policy of the United States, not only tolerance, but acceptance of religion comes true, and other countries follow suit, but America becomes the first country in the world to not only tolerate other religions, but to actually accept them, to welcome them with open arms, and to say you are welcome to practice your religion here and to do and to worship as you see fit. Since then, of course, the success that Jews have enjoyed in America, I think, serves as a coming true of the blessing of George Washington. May the children of the stock of Abraham continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, etc., etc. I think many Jews have seen wonderful fruit in this country. And I figured it would be a great time now. We'll take maybe 3 people from each column. If you'd like to volunteer, please raise your hand. I'd love to hear how your family came to the U.S. If you know, whether it was during World War I, during World War II, maybe even earlier than both wars, etc. You know? What?
How your family did.
You know how? Yeah, you want to tell the story? Oh, okay.
Just want to raise your hand.
Maybe for Menachem, I'll tell the story of my family, and then we'll see who wants to go next. All right. So on both sides of my family, it was post World War II. It was the mid 1940s. On my the grandfather that I'm named for, on the Rifkin side, my Zayda Zusha came here in 1947, 1948. In fact, we have 2 letters. One that he writes to the previous Rebbe, and in which he gets a blessing from the previous Rebbe, wishing him safe travels and repatriation in the land of Israel. And then 1 year later, in 1949, I think it is, a letter wishing him safe travels to the U.S. to repatriate to the United States. And when I asked my father, so what was the story? He goes, yeah, it was a little bit of disagreement between Bubby and Zaidi, he says. And Zaidi really, really wanted to go to Israel. And Bubby said, I've had enough wars for one lifetime. And boy, was she right. Anyways, and that's the story on my father's side. On my mother's side, my grandfather came here single, alone, at 15 years old, by ship. Also in 1947, 48, right after World War II, they had both sides of my family had come from Russia. And he came here alone and got a message within a year, I think, that his mother, who was pregnant at the time and gave birth, died in childbirth. And then it turns out the last time he saw his mother was before he came here. And that's how my family came to the United States, and the rest is history. Anybody else want to volunteer? Ben Sion, go ahead.
So my great-great-grandfather, Reuven Shen, who by the way was a Chavatzner,
Okay.
came to Baltimore from Dvinsk at the beginning of the 20th century.
Wow. So early 1900s.
Yes,
So this is post World War I imagine.
pre-World War I.
Pre-World War I. Wow. Do you know why he came?
Uncertain.
Uncertain. Okay.
Probably
Anybody else?
reasons.
Go ahead, Vicky.
On my father's side, my great-great-grandfather came here because he was on the wrong side of the Russian Revolution, and he was fighting on the wrong side, so he made a very hasty exit and came with very little. And,
So give us the year, Russian Revolution.
I met him.
No.
I met him.
Which one?
1917 is the
1917?
Yeah,
Okay.
so that would be about right.
Okay.
And he lived a long life, and I got to meet him and know
Mixing up the
him.
religions.
And then on my maternal side, my grandmother came with her mother from England. My great-great-grandfather was a coal miner and came to America and was turned back because he had some kind of eye infection. And back then, if you weren't just perfectly okay, too bad. And he went back to England, and my great-grandmother had
This would have been at Ellis Island, probably.
Yeah, pardon?
This would have been at Ellis Island.
Yeah, they
imagine.
put him.
That's where they were, they had the
Yeah.
hospital there, et cetera, for those that have visited.
And
Okay.
then, but I want to say about my grandfather, because he was sent, before World War II, they were trying to get people out of Poland, but they couldn't afford to bring everybody, so they were going sequentially, and then those who worked here sent the next sibling.
Right, to request, yeah.
And so my grandfather was the last of the siblings that made it here, and he lost the rest of his family
Oh, wow,
during the
amazing.
Holocaust.
Wow.
So I'm very grateful to be
Yes,
here.
absolutely.
My great-grandfather.
All right, somebody in this row. Gloria, go ahead.
My grandparents on my father's side were from Hungary, and they came about 1895.
Wow.
Yeah, and they established, there were rabbis in the family. I have some paintings of
Really?
Rabbi Margaret was the family name, and they used to have lots of business. And then on my mother's side, they came about in 1895, and she already had a sister that was settled in Vermont, and so they ended up settling themselves in Pittsburgh. And
Wow.
they came from Lithuania, and my father's parents came from Hungary.
Sheesh. Okay, let's do one more. I'm gonna ask you, hold on, go ahead.
So our ancestors started in Spain. They got kicked out of Spain. They made their way to Iran. And we were in Iran. My mother's grandfather, I guess my great grandfather, he had Senor in front of his name. So like Senor Lobby.
Wow.
And then in the 79, 78, 79.
Of course, yeah, that's when most of the Iranians.
Yeah, well, we came here for vacation, summer
Really?
vacation, and
Before?
and then a revolution started, and we just.
And they just never went back. So they
No,
lost
my dad
all their
went back
possessions.
a few times, but basically everything was left there.
Yeah.
And you're still on
Wow,
vacation.
that's wild.
Yeah, it's
They missed the revolution.
Killing time.
Just could have been there. Okay. Again and again, America has become a haven for our people. Destitute and desperate Jews have come to the shores of this great country with nothing but their faith. I mean, literally, you know the story. Nothing but their faith, their resilience, and hope for a new beginning. This is why the Rebbe, who, by the way, himself and his father-in-law also came also with very little from the old country, right after, this was right before World War II or in the middle of World War II. This is why they coined the term Malchus Shel Chesed, which means a nation of kindness. Because the United States of America, for all of its faults and for all of its challenges, and for everything that we disagree with that's being done in this country, in this state or in other states, in this city or in other cities, from this politician or from that politician, regardless, it still remains a Malchus Shel Chesed, a place where kindness reigns and accepts, not only tolerates Jews, but actually accepts Jews. So, what I'd like to do is, on the birthday, or in advance of the birthday of the United States of America, the 250th birthday, I'd like to take a moment to do what we should all be doing on our birthday. A birthday, while it's fun to celebrate, sure, go ahead. It's certainly not a good idea to be scared of it. One day older is just one day wiser, it's one day more. But it's a day to reflect on the fact that God wants my mission in this world to continue. This is why the Jewish thing to do on a birthday is to treat it as a day of reflection, to make what's known as a cheshbon hanefesh, an accounting of the soul. My soul has a mission in this world. What am I doing to accomplish that mission? And so I think the best thing we can do over these 4 weeks and tonight in a big way is to actually reflect on the 250th anniversary of this country to reflect on the values of this country, the ideals of this country, and to think about the Jewish relationship with this country and where we stand and what we can do to keep it alive. So, on page 4, we have another exercise. And what I'd like to ask you to do is, if anybody has one, please raise your hand. Let's try to think what it is about America that actually makes it a place where Jews have flourished more than in any other country in the diaspora. Does anybody have any ideas? Please raise your hand. Yes, Lyle.
Freedom. They have,
Give me a little more than that.
well, they have the freedom to participate in the economy.
Absolutely. So freedom, you're not even talking about freedom of religion, just the freedom to be able to function like everyone else, equality, equal opportunity. Okay, Gail?
The rule of law.
The rule of, but that's kind of goes together. The rule of law which enforces the freedom. Very good. Meaning, if not, other people might have eventually taken advantage of that equality, as we haven't, as it happened in other places. Anya.
Freedom of speech. We're allowed to have our own opinions without getting prosecuted by the government.
Very good. I think a lot of this is starting to sound a little redundant. Freedoms, we all know about those freedoms. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of opportunity, right? Those, which are very, very important. Anything else, besides for just freedom? Something else, yes?
Declaration of Independence.
The rule of law.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, is that what you mean? In other words, the fact that that declaration actually has ratified within it certain rights and certain freedoms. Very good. Bencio, go ahead.
So in the United States, you've had sort of a mixture, a rather odd mixture, of two seemingly opposing forces.
Mhm.
So number one, American political secularism,
Okay.
but also mixed with American religiosity. You know,
So you're saying the freedom of
created a situation where not only have Jews been tolerated,
but they've been accepted.
correct.
I think what you're referring to, it usually is referred to, I like the way you put it, but usually is referred to as a separation of church and state. In other words, the fact that the politics of the country is secular, or maybe not secular, but
It's not just separate
Right.
church and state. It's separate church and state even as America has remained a very religious country.
right, which is a fascinating concept. I wonder why that is. You want to say something, Tova Jane? Go ahead.
Well,
We'll take one more after this.
maybe the same thing, but meritocracy, because we've always been a learned people, but maybe we could use our learning in
I like that.
in other societies. But when you have a meritocracy, which we're supposed to have, if you're educated, if you think, if you.
I like that. In other words, what she's saying is Jews have always been able, meaning we've always placed a huge emphasis on education. Jews were literate way before it was common for everyone to be able to read, etc. Right? And the fact that they weren't successful in other countries often was because they weren't allowed to be successful. They had the tools to be able to do that. They had the wherewithal to be able to do that. They had the drive to do that, but they often were being clamped down. And the fact that in America everything is based on your merit, right? Think of, for example, even the civil rights movement, right? The fact that it's like, don't judge a person based on this, only judge them based on the character of their actions. So when you allow for that meritocracy, that merit-based success, so then Jews will flourish and will be successful. Sure, Gail, I'll give you a second chance, then that'll be the last one.
So in the early history of New York,
Mm-hmm.
the Jews were never in the poorhouse because their community always took care of each other.
You're saying that their disputes
No,
didn't.
it's a poorhouse. Not courthouse, poorhouse.
Oh, poorhouse. P-O-O-R. I'm sorry, I thought you said courthouse. Right, got it. In other words, because they had their own gemachs and their own kind chesed organizations, etc. Okay, I love that. I think a lot of these things are true. What I'm going to argue in this course is that in addition to all those things, I think those things are very true, so much so that I appeared on the slides. I think in addition to all those things, there is also a tremendous commonality between a lot of the values that America has built into its society and Judaism has built into its society. Things like caring for others, things like equal rights for all, and a respect for every single human being, but also even really every creation of God, an appreciation of the fact that God is the one who created everything, and therefore there might be a certain way to interact with those things, etc. So what I'd like to do is, over the course of today's lesson, is I'd like to take a moment to talk about three things that I think are very important when reflecting on 250 years of the United States. One of them is gratitude, and I think we've spoken a lot about that already, but the fact we have to be grateful for the fact that in this country, there has, for whatever the right reasons were that we mentioned today, the fact is that millions and millions and millions of Jews have been allowed to get a fresh start, to become successful, to flourish in whatever, and by the way, when I say successful, I know Americans immediately go towards money. I mean in whatever way they felt. There are many pious Jews who did not have a lot of money, but that wasn't what they considered successful. And America allowed them to be successful too in their connection to Hashem, etc. So I think we spoke already a lot about the gratitude. And in the rest of today's lesson, I'd like to speak about pride, responsibility, and opportunity. 3 things that come to mind for me as we go through, as we reflect on 250 years of this great country. So, any Jewish examination of civics, of American civics that is, should not begin in an assembly room in Philadelphia, where the Declaration of Independence was drafted 250 years ago. It should really begin much earlier than that. And for today's journey, I'd like to take us to the very first English settlers to establish a lasting presence on these shores, and I'm referring, of course, to the Pilgrims. To understand America, I think we first need to understand them, and so we have a little video presentation.
From the 15th through the 17th centuries, Europeans crossed the Atlantic in waves, seeking gold and glory, furs and fortunes. But the winter of 1620 brought a different kind of traveller, souls who risked everything for the chance to worship freely. The Pilgrims were English separatists, a radical breakaway from the Church of England. They believed worship had drifted far from God's original design. This put them at odds with England's religious rule and tyrannical monarchy, and inspired their perilous journey. The Pilgrims embraced the biblical idea that the Creator is intimately involved in the details of life. They saw evidence of this everywhere. A sudden wind that saved their ship, the discovery of unexpected food, a Native American who spoke their language. Furthermore, the Pilgrims and later American founders saw their story as a modern parallel of sorts to the Jewish exodus from Egypt. England was like an Egypt, its king like a pharaoh. Their voyage mirrored the exodus. The Atlantic crossing and early hardships were similar to the Jews' Sinai trek, and America was like the promised land. After enduring a brutal winter, losing half their group to disease and starvation, the survivors managed to produce a successful harvest. Echoing biblical traditions, they celebrated with a feast of thanksgiving to God. They considered their survival and success divine kindness, worthy of perpetual gratitude, a belief that evolved into the American holiday of Thanksgiving. Pilgrim leader William Bradford recorded a founding vision for all future Americans. His words, adapted here into modern English, closely paraphrase King David. May not and ought not the children of these fathers rightly say, our fathers were Englishmen who crossed this great ocean and were close to perishing in this wilderness. But they cried out to the Lord, and he heard their voice and looked upon their suffering. Let them, therefore, praise the Lord, for he is good, and his mercy endures forever. Yes, let those whom the Lord has redeemed declare how he delivered them from the hand of the oppressor when they wandered in the desert and wilderness, lost and without a city to dwell in, hungry and thirsty, until their souls grew faint within them. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loving kindness and his wondrous works to humanity. This intimate identification with a Jewish story shaped their self-perception, a people saved by God, whose children would remember their saga as a foundational event. More than 150 years later, immediately after adopting the Declaration of Independence, the Continental Congress appointed Benjamin Franklin Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams to design a national seal. The original proposal depicted Moses parting the Red Sea, Pharaoh's army drowning, and God's guiding pillar of fire. The motto? Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. That design was ultimately shelved due to its complexity, but the fact that it almost became the seal on all documents of the American government reflects how deeply the Pilgrims' biblical worldview influenced the founding of America.
This is what I mean when I say that in addition to gratitude of the United States, as if the Jewish people have always been this downtrodden people that come to the U.S. and U.S. what's the also written by a Jew, by Emma Lazarus. Not going to touch. Give me. You're tired. You're huddled. You're masters. I forget all the words. And that's one way of thinking of the Jewish experience, and we should think of the Jewish American experience that way, from at least one part, as grateful for the fact that America accepts us. But now we're injecting a whole other type of emotion, and that is pride. Pride in the fact that the values that shaped America actually came from us. They came, well, not from us, came from the Torah, came from Judaism, came from God. Starting from the Pilgrims, these ideas not only shape the United States, but they actually filter in throughout. It's not just that symbol, this symbol which almost became the national seal and was only shelved for the complexity. It's not just that. Today, we can see many other symbols throughout the United States and throughout institutions in the United States that actually have Torah messages infused in them. If you turn to page 8, 9, and 10 in your book, let's go through some of them. And these are, some of them as old as or older than the Constitution. The Yale University Coat of Arms, for example, which dates back at least to 1736, has on it a book, an open book, with the words Urim Vetumim, which, by the way, eventually becomes Yale's Latin motto, etc., as well, Luz et Veritas, which means light and truth. Or at least it's one way of translating. Urim Vetumim. And that is a Jewish concept. The Urim Vetumim was the name, you could see it in the actual Torah, exactly. It was one description of the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, or more accurately, the parchment with Hashem's name on it that was inside the breastplate, in which they would ask before the Jewish people went to war, and they would ask for prophecy, etc. The Liberty Bell in Philadelphia, which of course is an iconic symbol of American independence, inscribed on the bell is a verse from Leviticus, which says, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof." On the U.S. Supreme Court building, there are 10, is it 10? I don't know how many it is, but a sculpture of a group of great lawgivers from history, and the most dominant one in the center, you can see it in the picture, is supposed to be Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, depicted holding the two tablets. The same thing in the House of Representatives and in the U.S. Capitol. Is this just repetitive that it has twice? Okay, 23 marble relief portraits depict historical figures, and Moses is depicted in the center. Of course, that's how Moses looked. We know that because that was his profile picture on TikTok. So that's what Moses looked like. What was that?
He doesn't have horns.
He doesn't have horns, right? At least for the second. Be thankful for what you can get. And there's many other such examples. Of buildings that have buildings or institutions, or even on our currency, for example. It says, "In God we trust." E pluribus unum. I don't know if we can say for sure that that's a biblical concept. That definitely has a lot of Torah value in it. We're going to talk about a lot of other things throughout the course. But my point is that in addition to gratitude, I think we can have pride. If we are to reflect on 250 years of this country, we shouldn't only view it as an amazing country that welcomed our ancestors with all the varying stories that there were coming to this land. I think it's also a sense of pride in that our values are not only shared values, they don't just happen to be the same values, but actually a lot of them come from the Torah directly. Let's move on to responsibility. Before the Pilgrim founders ever landed in America, they had already taken their first official political step. In 1620, while they were still on board the Mayflower, the settlers, who would eventually establish New Plymouth, wrote and signed an agreement that became known as, let's see, who remembers their high school? Yeah?
Mayflower Compact.
The Mayflower Compact, thank you. The Mayflower Compact is a foundational text. Because of its historical significance, we're going to read it in the original Old English. So pardon me if there are some typos or lack of readability. Anybody want to volunteer to read it? It's text 3, the Mayflower Covenant. Anybody? Marilyn, go ahead.
Okay.
Page 11.
In the name of God, man, we whose names are underwritten, do by these presents, solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together to a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid. And by virtue thereof, do enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and officers from time to time, as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience.
So of course we can point to the fact that it says in the name of God, etc., but we've already established that they were religious, that they believed in God, etc. What I want to talk about is the fact that they feel the need to frame this compact as a covenant, which I think is very, very telling. The word choice is specific and significant. What's unique about a covenant? So Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs saw great importance in the choice of this word. Russell, want to read for us, please? Text 4.
Text 4, forming a society.
Yep.
Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs. Covenant is one of the 3 broad types of political systems. Polities come into being in one of 3 ways: conquest, slow growth and development, or formal conscious decision. The first tends to produce a hierarchical society, the second an organic one, the third society as covenant.
Okay, pause for just a moment.
Yeah.
And we'll have somebody else continue reading. Let me explain what he's saying here. He's saying that all societies form in one of 3 ways. Either they form by violent conquest, we know a lot of examples of such ones, right? Where one nation conquers another nation, or it forms organically, which means people come together, they happen to be living in the same place, eventually they form a government between themselves and that government governs them. Or, and the third one, this is very, very significant, is a covenantal society. Let's go through them one at a time, shall we? Tova Jane, you want to read for us? Start with conquest.
Conquest leads to hierarchical societies. I think I've studied this before.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll keep going. There is a ruler, a court, an administration, a priestly elite, and beneath them the great mass of the people. The key biblical example is the Egypt of the pharaohs. In hierarchy, power is structured as a pyramid. It is not accidental that the pyramids of Egypt survive as symbols of that empire. More modern examples include Napoleonic France and 19th century Prussia.
Thank you. So what happens when a society is built on a foundation of conquest? You see the ripple effect of that throughout the government, meaning the government is going to be a hierarchical government. There's going to be a king or some sort of a dictator, and there's going to be a class system whereby the people that he feels are more important are going to be more important, etc. And the 2 examples that he gives, one biblical and one more modern, are Egypt or Napoleonic, or the Napoleon's French Empire. Egypt of the pharaohs was very much a class system, and we saw very similar under the French Empire under Napoleon. What's the second way? Let's go with anybody? Douglas, you want to read for us? The second kind of society.
The second kind of society, one that emerges from long custom and habituation, is usually called organic. In an organic society, things are there because they always were. Their origins tend to be lost in the mists of time. Organic societies have customs, rituals, uniforms, and ceremonials that cast the aura of antiquity and inevitability over the present. Power is less a matter of pyramids than of center and periphery. Those who wield power meet in clubs, schools, universities, regiments, and teams. They cultivate an era of amateurism and frown on meritocracy, effort, and enthusiasm. Roger Scruton's England and Elegy is a prose poem to this kind of society.
What's going on here? When an organic society, which usually, when we say organic society, what we mean is that it's the ancientness of the society that takes like the highest precedent. So in a society that's built on violent conquest, what takes the most front and center? What's the greatest thing you can have going for you in such a society? Either to be born into royalty, into the aristocracy, or to somehow be the strongest man in the room, and therefore you can overthrow that monarchy and create a different monarchy, etc. Right? Much of history is built this way. The other type of society, an organic society, the best thing you can have going for you is be part of an ancient tradition of whatever it is. Right? In other words, this is the way things always were, this is the way they always will be. That's the motto of the society. And that's because that's the foundation of that society. The foundation of the society is we were always here, or we were here for a very long time. His example is England, right? That in England, anything ancient has, till today by the way, even though England has obviously modernized, but till today, England, the greatest thing going for anyone in England is if you can be really, really English, meaning if you can go back 650 years or 890 years or whatever it is, that gives you value in that society. Why? Because that's the currency, if you will, that is traded in that society, because those are the values that the society is built on. Okay, and here he gets to his main point. Susan, you want to read for us? The third kind.
The third kind, covenantal society, is formed in a conscious act of new beginnings. The parties come together to achieve what neither can achieve alone. The key element is covenant. The key element in covenant is neither power nor the past, but a verbal declaration, a mutually binding promise. Covenantal politics is supremely a politics of the word. The word given, the word received, the word honored and trust.
Okay, so this is the main point he wants to make. He says when a society is built, as the United States is, on a covenant, not on, oh, we were all here together, so let's form a community. Or, oh, we were the strongest people in the room, we conquered another nation, therefore, no. When it's built on a covenant, on a word that is given, that creates a very different kind of society. It creates a meritocracy, which is all about the word that you give to someone else. Are you keeping your word to someone else? That is the currency with which the society trades. And it's interesting to note that even before the Pilgrims arrived on these shores, the first thing they did, it's interesting, before they had land, before they had 2 square feet to call their own, they established what they call a body politic. We are giving each other our word that we are going to be together and we are going to operate together, and this is how we're going to go forward. Now, when Jonathan Sacks talks about this, he talks about a precedent for a conquest society. He talks about a precedent for a organic society. What would be a precedent? What would be the historical precedent for a covenantal society? Anyone? That would be us. Okay, let's take a look. If you go back, and by the way, the Pilgrims themselves mentioned this, we'll get to in a moment. When the Jewish people arrived at Sinai, Sinai was not some sort of... First of all, let's talk about the chronological order here. Sinai happens before the Jewish people enter the land of Israel. They do not have a king. They do not have a land. They do not have anything like that yet. They don't even have a shared purpose. What happens? God makes a covenant. And that covenant is both, even though we often talk about that covenant being between the Jewish people and God, it's also a covenant between ourselves. One of the things, we'll talk about in just a moment, one of the things that we often talk about in Judaism is Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh, which means all Jewish people are responsible one for another. This is a Jewish concept, a Jewish halachic concept I should mention, called arvut. Arvut means responsibility one for another. When did that arvut start? Jews were not necessarily responsible for each other in Egypt. When they became a nation at Sinai, when God said, you are going to be my nation, he said, part of this covenant is that you are going to be responsible for each other. Now there's lots of times that the covenants are mentioned in the Torah. The Torah is, you can almost say, obsessed with covenants all the time. Between God and Noach, between Avimelech and Yitzchak, between Avram and Hashem. And then of course, between the Jewish people and God. There's lots of examples throughout the Torah. But let's of course talk about the most prominent of them, which is the Jewish people at Sinai. So from the entire event of the giving of the Torah, we're going to read the verses that describe God's offer and the Jewish people's response, namely the covenant. Jeff, can you read for us, please? Text 5, page 13, the Sinai covenant.
God said, "Now if you will obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasure from among all peoples, for all the earth is mine. You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." The people all responded in unison and said, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do."
So far, we have very clearly a covenant between God and the Jewish people. But the Medrash points out, Nikki, can you read for us please, text 6, that this also formed a covenant between the Jewish people themselves. Go ahead. Mutual responsibility.
Mutual responsibility. When the Jewish people accepted God's rule at Mount Sinai, they did so joyfully, as one, as the verse states. The people all responded in unison. It's in Exodus 19:8. In doing so, they even committed to serving as guarantors for each other.
This is a fascinating concept. When they answered in unison to God that we accept, it wasn't just, we each accept on our own a relationship with Hashem. It was all of us together, and we're all in this together. By the way, you see undercurrents of that till today, with Chabad saying, hey, we're responsible for other Jews, right? Jews saying you see those undercurrents when the Jews in Amsterdam are caring for the Jews in New Amsterdam. You see those undercurrents throughout Jewish culture and society. Even those that don't consider themselves religious consider themselves responsible for other Jews. Why? Why can't you just go live on an island? Right? No. Jews inherently feel, ever since Sinai, we feel a responsibility towards each other. As I mentioned earlier, I'll point it out again, it's interesting to note that this happened before the Jewish people had a land, or a king, or a government, or even a political entity of any sort. The first thing they had was they became a nation. And today, that becomes the answer to many people who wonder, how is it possible that Jews survived for so many years without, right? You don't meet anybody today and they tell you I'm a Roman, right? Why? Because as Jews, our identity didn't start and therefore didn't continue being based on where we lived. Even though we did live for a very long time in Israel, and even though we're so happy now that Jews live in Israel, and all the wonderful things that the state of Israel brings. But even that, there are many Jews who disagree with the state of Israel, a million and a half different things. On all sides of the aisle, by the way, right? There are those on the extreme religious side, those on the extreme liberal and secular side that disagree with the state of Israel. The state or the land never had anything to do with the fact that we were a people. That was our land. But that wasn't what made us a people. What made us a people was the covenant. And as a society that is built on a covenant, the currency of which we trade is responsibility. The word that we give to each other and the word that we keep to each other. Are you a part of this nation or not? Oh, you are a part of this nation? Show it. Let's see. Are you responsible? Are you keeping that covenant alive? And I think that's the third point that I want to talk about, that when it comes to the United States, reflecting on the fact that America is a covenant-based society is a very strong sense, should evoke within us a very strong sense of responsibility. A responsibility to keep that covenant alive, to live by those American values. For example, one of the things the Rebbe always encouraged Hasidim to do, the Rebbe never told them who to vote for, but he said it is a duty of a Jew to go and vote. Why? Because voting is inherently a Jewish concept. Think about it. We've made a covenant that this is all, that everything that happens in this country is going to be based on our word, our responsibility towards each other. Then we have to be active participants in it. Because if everybody is not an active participant, then what happens? The whole society falls apart, because the society is built on that covenant. So I think when I reflect on 250 years of the United States, I think of so far three things. A, gratitude towards all the opportunity that was presented to Jews and the embracing of Jews throughout the generations in this country. Number two, pride in the fact that we have shared values, and a lot of our values are the values of this country, etc. And number three now, and possibly much more of a call to action, is the responsibility that comes with recognizing that our society, in other words, the culture that we're a part of as Jews, and the culture that is America, and being American, both of them come with a strong sense of you have to keep it alive. If you don't keep it alive, it doesn't exist, because it's based on that covenant. Number four, the last thing I want to talk about is, hold on, I'm a few slides behind again. Okay, number four that I want to talk about. Actually, let's just drive this home with the end of that text from Rabbi Sachs, which is text 7 on page 15. Adam, can you read for us?
Conventional politics.
Covenantal.
Oh, covenantal. Yeah. Covenantal politics.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. It was in America that covenantal politics received its most complete expression The first formal act of the Pilgrim Fathers was the Mayflower Pact of 1620. We whose names are underwritten solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one of another covenant and combine ourselves together in a civil body politic. Aboard the Arabella in 1630, John Winthrop similarly declared, "We are entered into covenant with him, God, for this work." The United States is unique among modern polities in having the same structure as the Bible.
Okay. Before we move on to the fourth point, I want to call your attention, not for now, but for after the lesson, if you'd like to check out Appendix C, you can see how Abraham Lincoln thought about and understood this concept that America is based on a covenant, and the fact that he also believed there was a need, and think about Abraham Lincoln's time and how he actually acted that way. The ongoing sustaining of the covenant to him was a very, very real part of what it means to be American. Okay. The fourth thing that I want to talk about this evening, and the last 15 minutes of the class, this is what we'll spend our time on, is opportunity. We spoke earlier about the great blessing, right? The gratitude that we should have for what America has meant to Jews. And for the most part, I think most of us thought in the material sense, right? In other words, opportunity to be able to build a home for your family and to build a life for your family and to be able to bring in money for your family, have a job for your family, etc. But let's discuss a little bit about what America has meant for Jews in the religious sense. It's important to state at the outset what America is not, okay, what it doesn't mean for our Judaism. America doesn't change our Judaism at all. For a long time, I would say up until the 1940s, there was this notion among Jews in America that Jews in America look and act and pray and worship differently than the old Jew from the old country. In Yiddish, there was an expression, America is anders. America is different. Why? Because in America, we don't do things that way. We're not so archaic that way. We don't have these rituals and these traditions, etc. The old shtetl of Europe was called the Old World, and America was called the New World, right? It was called the Golden Land of opportunity. And opportunity, even though nobody said it out loud, meant material opportunity, right? The ability to pursue every material pleasure that there is in the world. When the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, whose birthday we just celebrated this past Shabbos, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, otherwise known as the Rebbe Rayatz, arrived on these shores in 1940. He was fleeing, of course, the inferno of the Nazi death camps and Nazi-occupied Europe, and he immediately declared a spiritual war against this notion. That is not what America means. We don't have to settle for America is anders. America is different religiously. And his motto became, America is nicht anders. We're not going to read it here today, but one of the most fascinating historical texts to read of the previous Rebbe is his diary from the 10th of Adar, the day after his ship arrives on the shores of the U.S. He goes to the Greystone Hotel. He gives this speech about how Judaism is alive and well, and even though, imagine, he's talking literally in the middle of a Holocaust. And Judaism is alive and well, and we're going to keep Judaism alive, and it's important to be religious and be connected to your heritage, etc. And he writes in his diary about the personal conversations that he had immediately afterwards from good, dear friends that he had. The Frierdiker Rebbe was not new to America. He had come for a year-long visit just 11 years earlier. And the previous Rebbe writes with such bitter sadness, and because he's writing live. It's literally the next day. And he writes about how all of his friends came to him and said, Rabbi, I don't know what to tell you. I hope your ideas kick off, but many a rabbi has come to these shores and said the same speeches you said, and they haven't been successful, because America is different. And in America, you shave your beard. And in America, you take off your kippah. And in America, you work on Shabbos, because you just can't keep everything like you did in the old shtetl. And he writes with such utter sadness about it. But you can see between that sadness a conviction. You can read a little bit about it in Appendix D. That's the Rebbe reflecting on the Frierdiker Rebbe's proclamation of America is nicht anders, America is no different. But what was the previous Rebbe fighting? What he was fighting was, we don't have to be different. It doesn't have, I'm sorry, when I use the phrase that way, it evokes a different idea. America doesn't have to be different. He says, why would you give up? Finally, you're free. In every other country, they have forced you to be like them. And finally, in America, they are saying to you, embrace your identity. Be who you want to be. This is a melting pot where everyone can come with whatever traditions they have, and they can be just as American as apple pie. By the way, it wasn't out at the beginning, but my mother-in-law made a delicious apple pie. If you'd like to have some afterwards, on the way out, you can have some. Everybody, you can be religious, Jewish, a yarmulke, a beard, tzitzis, and everything, and a long black coat, and you're just as American as somebody who's Hispanic and eats tacos and whatever else there is that makes somebody Hispanic, right? In other words, every single one of them is American. It was to be American is to be a part of a diversity. So finally they're giving you that freedom. And what do you do with that freedom? You say, no, I want to be like them. I want to be the same. I don't want to be openly Jewish. That was the undercurrent of what the previous Rebbe was trying to explain to the Jews of his time in 1940. And by the way, to a large degree, we can say he was successful. I mean, today Chabad is literally synonymous with Judaism, right? And everywhere you go in the world, you see Chabadniks. And what Chabadniks stand for is you can be outwardly and proudly Jewish in this country and be just as American as everyone else. You can be the Chabad rabbi and be the one to call the America Celebration 250 event. You know why? Because being American and being religious are they're not just mutually exclusive, they're actually synonymous with each other. They actually go very well together. And the previous Rebbe was telling people, America is nicht anders. In America, you don't have to be conforming to what other people say you need to be. And that's such an opportunity. And for you not to embrace that opportunity would be the biggest shame. Let's read text 8, in which the Rebbe takes this one step further. So the Rebbe, obviously the previous Rebbe's son-in-law, takes this one step further. And he says, not only, and again, you'll see this literally in the personality of all the Chabad rabbis you know, hopefully in me as well. The Rebbe says, not only should we not give up our Jewish traditions, we can be Jewish in an American style. It doesn't have to be in the European style. There can be an American brand of Judaism. Annie, you want to read for us, please? Text 8.
The sages say, when you come to a place, follow the local customs, respect the law. This does not mean that we should compromise on Torah matters to follow local conventions, as many mistakenly believe saying America is different. On the contrary, we need to leverage the local customs in a holy way so that the local conventions actually advances in a positive direction. A practical illustration, we see people walking in the streets with head coverings, and most notably with their tzitzit outwardly visible. This wasn't done in Europe in the past, even among godly-fearing Jews. As they lived among non-Jews, they didn't display their tzitzit outwardly. Yet nowadays, we even see children walking with their tzitzit out as a matter of course. This practice is continuing to spread. This in line with one of the conventions of America, the concept of publicity. Tzitzits are being publicized and people are not embarrassed to wear them. Since the verse regarding tzitzit says, you shall see them and remember God's commandments. They are wearing them visibly at all times. The sages teach that we wear tzitzit to display our master's seal on our person. So people are displaying them to all and publicizing them. This is one of the local conventions that can advance us. This leverages the American traits of boldness and publicity in a holy way.
Says the Rebbe, America has a unique character to it. I know it annoys a lot of the world. But us Americans, we are known for being arrogant, bold, proud, out there, loud, outspoken, etc. Says the Rebbe, why can't we be Jewish Americans? Why can't we be bold, loud, outspoken Jews? And the Rebbe came to America, and from day one, that's the way he operated. He realized that in the US, how does it work? Everything has a mission statement, and an announcement, and a PR statement. And on literally the first day that the Rebbe takes on the mantle of leadership in 1951, he says, this is the mission statement of Chabad. He makes a mission statement. There was never a Rebbe before him that made a mission statement. And then he starts with campaigns, mitzvah campaigns. Literally reminiscent of, as if he had gone to some advertising, on Madison Avenue at some advertising school and learned that the way to do Judaism in America is to make mitzvah campaigns. Let's have mitzvah tanks rolling down the streets with loud, blaring Hasidic music and young Hasidic yeshiva boys dancing on the street. Let's have menorahs up in every public square. These are not just incidental ideas that the Rebbe brought to America with him from the old shtetl. No, this is the Rebbe taking Judaism and saying, hey, let's be American Jewish. Let's be Jewish the American way, which means Not only does America provide the opportunity of the freedom to be Jewish here, just like you were in the shtetl, it actually provides you with the opportunity to be Jewish in the American way, to be Jewish in this new, bold, and outspoken way, which is unprecedented in history. And I think that's the last idea I want to emphasize today. So to summarize, we've spoken about 4 different ideas. Number 1 is gratitude. The fact that America has shown the Jewish nation unprecedented kindness should lead us to feel that way about America as Jewish Americans. Gratitude towards a country that tolerates us, and more importantly, that accepts us and allows us to flourish. Number 2, pride. Pride in the fact that the ideals of America are Jewish ideals. They are Torah ideals. The founders of America drew inspiration from the Torah. We'll talk more about that in the following lessons. Number 3, responsibility. That's much more of a call to action. It's not just a nice, lovey feeling of pride or of gratitude or whatever it is. No. This is a call to action. The covenant of America, like the covenant of Judaism, is a responsibility. What can I do to help the people around me and strengthen my community to keep that covenant alive? And finally, number 4, opportunity. How can I use America's unique opportunities, the character of what America allows us to be? How can I use that to advance my Judaism and to embrace my Judaism and to be more proudly Jewish? With this, we will conclude today's lesson. I know that many of you only signed up for tonight, so if we're saying goodbye to you, we're sad to do so, but thank you for joining us for this evening. But if you will be joining us next week's lesson, which is called The Roots of Equality, is going to talk about this very important Jewish American value of equality and where we can see the sources of that in the Torah and how it really is a Jewish ideal. And now please turn your attention to the video screens for a summary of today's lesson.
Lesson 1. The Foundations of the Covenant. 1. America has been a remarkable blessing for the Jewish people. Time and again, Jews have arrived on its shores as refugees, destitute and desperate, and achieved incredible success. America has accorded its Jews something unprecedented in Jewish diaspora history: acceptance. 2. The Pilgrims' worldview is shaped by their belief in a God intimately involved in their world, seeing divine providence and miracles in everyday events. They viewed their journey to America through the lens of the biblical story of the Exodus, seeing all the hardships they endured as trials of faith. 3. The Pilgrims' first political act was creating the Mayflower Compact, combining themselves to form a society and pledging to create just laws for the good of their society. Unlike most nations, which were formed through conquest or gradual evolution, America was formed by a conscious covenant of promises its people made with each other. 4. The Pilgrims were inspired by the example of God's covenant with the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, which preceded the establishment of political structures. 5. Sustaining a covenantal society requires the continued investment of the people of each succeeding generation. 6. We can live full and unapologetic Jewish lives in America, just as our ancestors did for thousands of years. Moreover, we can leverage the American spirit of individualism, personal initiative, and boldness to make Jewish life flourish like never before. 7. Judaism had a pivotal influence on America's foundations. This is a key reason why America has become so successful, and why it has afforded us Jews such great success in it.
Thank you all for joining us.